Welcome to Legends of Data and AI. Each episode includes inspiring and actionable data and artificial intelligence insights from global leaders across industries. Your host, Dr. Usama Fayyad, was the first Chief Data Officer at Yahoo and is Chairman of Open Insights and Executive Director of the Institute for Experiential AI at Northeastern University.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of our podcast, Legends of Data and AI, where we talk to experts about their experiences and their views on kind of the importance of data and AI in big topics for us in daily life in many areas of business and government and organizations. Today, I am very pleased to have a very good friend, former colleague, and someone who has a pretty unique perspective on the area we're going to be discussing, especially around kind of cybersecurity and the roles of data and AI in it. I met Troels Oerting when he joined Barclays Bank at the group level as the Chief Information Security Officer, and then his role expanded to kind of be Chief of all security across the bank. Prior to that, he had experience with physical and cybersecurity, both at the Europol. And post that, he had probably one of the most interesting jobs around in these days in this hot field of cybersecurity, where he was asked to be the chairman of the World Economic Forum Global Center for Cybersecurity. So welcome, Troels, and so great to see you again.
Thank you, Usama. It's always a privilege for me to be with you. You're one of the best experts I know and also a really good friend. So I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, Troels. So let me start with the first question. You have a unique perspective, and you led teams into the physical world of, what I'll call, of course, online cybersecurity. While both fields, of course, involve interacting with data and evidence, cybersecurity involves a lot more data. What are the challenges for practitioners and SOC, cyber, security operations center personnel in this very data-rich world?
It's a very good question, because I think it differs a bit from when you have IT experts in various fields. You have network experts and you have those who secure that we have uptime and whatever. When you're in security, you have, I think, much more data to deal with. And you also have, to a certain extent, experts that might be experts in some area, but not necessarily in all areas of this data world. And they need to combine information and react very, very fast in order to identify and keep people out. So the complexity is probably one of the biggest enemies of efficiency here. And the ability to detect, the signal through all the noise that you get every day. And you cannot, you need to be lucky every time. The criminal just needs to be lucky once. And that is why it's so important to be able to steer through all of these challenges.
So how do you think, human operators cope with this kind of wealth of data?
Yeah, but in the normal world, if you don't utilize some of the more, let's say, advanced tools, it's basically an endless stream of information that you are looking at and getting more and more scary about what you see. And then hopefully based on gut feeling or intuition or a number of triggers, then you make a decision. So there is this increasing fatigue among security people that they simply cannot follow the stream of information. That is information. It's not about insight. You're not sharing insight. You're not getting insight. Insight is different. I'll come back to that later, but just information. And I think that is, again, the biggest problem, is to be able to reach a conclusion very fast in this very rich data information, reality.
Right. So in that world where kind of the volumes, the variety, the velocity of the data coming at people who are supposed to monitor it and also kind of respond to what we will consider cybersecurity incidents or events of interest, can and should AI play a role in helping humans cope with all of this?
Yeah, I think that it not even should, it has to. Because if we don't do this, I guess we will lose. Because the world is getting increasingly complex. In the future, where everything will be connected, everything will be sensing, and everything will be stored, you will get so many signals from a variety of new devices, IoT devices, loads of things that are happening out there that you need somebody to filter it. I'm a huge fan of the human brain, but we need to make sure that the human brain is first engaged when there's something it should be engaged in. Otherwise, we will get tired and we will make mistakes. That is why you and I have also talked about how could we create this unique AI-driven tool that could take information from all kinds of sources and get this rich picture with reality. And then you ask a human being, is this positive or negative? Should we close? Should we not close? That is where you need to engage with the human brain.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's the rare commodity is the human and the expert's attention. Today there are many companies and many products that are supposed to help organizations protect their systems and assets against cyber attacks. In fact, I would argue too many tools and too many claims of protection. In your opinion, as a practitioner and expert, what is the biggest problem facing practitioners in this environment of the plethora of tools?
I think it's there are too many clones, right? So when I was a CISO and I was a chief security officer, if I didn't have engaged 2 pit bull terrier at the entrance, I would be overloaded with requests from buy this silver bullet that will help you from this and from this and from this and from this. So we overload, and we tend to overload our internal systems with new tools that are complementary, but also maybe just overlap to other things we have. And you have never seen a security expert or chief, take something and take it away. No, he just adds and adds and adds and never clean up. And that is why I think that we are getting poorer, actually. That's the first argument. The second argument is that we tend to strive for things that actually might be a threat, but not a real risk to you. So I think that we should go back to basics instead, and then we should focus on what really helps and what really makes a difference. Patching, for instance, is very, very needed instead of looking at air gapping and that theoretically can steal information. But is it a real risk? Hardly, unless you are employed in Lockheed Martin or whatever, but in normal business not. So I think that there is an overload of silver bullets and a lack of real things that makes a difference.
Yeah, and I fully agree. I actually that insight of yours that the more tools we have, the less effective and weaker we become in terms of our ability to act. So as you know, we've always talked about the fact that the biggest problem in any SOC, even before you walk in the door, you know that they're probably suffering from a plethora of false alarms. And all these tools are generating more and more false alarms. In your opinion, how could AI help with kind of this kind of environment and these kinds of problems?
I think I will just, before I answer this, I'll go just shortly back and say that what I also saw when I was in Barclays, for instance, was that we simply didn't include information from the physical world. So access card, for instance, were information. Video cameras, we did, and they were never patched. They were never upgraded with firmware and other things. So we should add that first of all. But if you add that, you of course also get even more information that you need to deal with. So AI play a crucial role here. If we can create the real algorithms here that maybe even is able to learn, because we will play with them and we will tell them when they hit and when they hit very badly, then I think that you can be able to simply filter out from all these data. You can narrow down and you have much less to focus on and to react on and to use your human brains for. That's what AI should do for us. And the criminals are already doing it. Adversarial AI is something that is very, very real in the criminal world. They don't have GDPR, data protection, or other things. They only have greed and want to steal. So they're very good at it, and that's why we need to simply start thinking much more, focused in this area.
Yeah, and I think, it really always disappoints me how little that community tries to leverage the AI and the data itself. But we'll talk some more about that. Actually, one related question to that, and I remember the incident once at Barclays where I was experimenting in my own way as a data guy of being inside the Barclays building and kind of unplugging a printer and being able to hack into the mail system. And when I called you and I self-declared myself, hey, Troels, I got unauthorized access just by doing the following, you were not surprised at all. And in fact, you said, hey, this is, because everybody's protecting the perimeter and they assume once you're in the building, you're okay. Have you seen any change in kind of that stance, that obsession with protecting the perimeter, now that the perimeter is even more diffuse and more gone as people work from home and work from anywhere? And, how is the community dealing with this?
No, but you're right. Again, you're right. And again, work from everywhere has simply just been, putting the spotlight on this problem. The perimeter is dead, right? And you know that. So what you're defending is different from the old times. And I think that we have become better to look at the inside when it comes to the technical things. So you will have NAC systems, so network access control systems, so that will monitor and they will whitelist or blacklist or whatever. So you will have some of this, but of course you don't have it fully. And the new challenge basically is that you and I are doing this online here on a video screen. I can in my work have access maybe to all my banks very as well because I work with it. And we have had many cases where insiders, employees that are disgruntled, now use this to get access and to take videos and whatever on what is going on inside, the most sensitive information. And we have no tool right now to actually prevent this from happening. So this is another challenge that you will see security is not talking that much about, but that's because they don't have a tool to prevent it, but they will in the future.
Yeah, the insider bad actor is a serious problem, probably bigger problem than the outsiders. For many years, including your days at Interpol and later at Barclays, and I'm sure as the chairman of the World Economic Forum Global Center on Cybersecurity, you've been a proponent of sharing data, between cybersecurity data and data useful to help with cybersecurity defense. And one of the statements I heard you repeat in many settings, hey, if your neighbor is getting attacked and you are spared, don't be happy, just wait and you will be next. So despite this, we have not seen a systematic approach around sharing data so that we can all help each other protect better. Well, why is that? Why has it been so difficult to kind of evolve towards a more sophisticated system for sharing data between different companies, different entities, even in different verticals? And why have the successes been limited when you've done this?
Again, this is one of the things that really frustrates me, Usama. I think I was to my first international cybersecurity senior meeting 24 years ago. An international meeting that took place in Europe. We were gathered many people, and we had a conclusion that said, this is a serious problem that we face. We need to share more, we need to exchange more, and we need to cooperate more. If I go to my last session that I had this year, 2 months ago, what do you think the conclusions were? This is a serious problem. We have to share more, we have to deal with what we have to work. Nothing has changed, right? The criminals, they exchange. They know the market is so big that it doesn't matter that they share information. We don't. And I have never really understood why not. I think part of it is that our legal departments makes it difficult, and there can be all kinds of claims afterwards if you share this and blah, blah, blah. There are GDPR and things like this. But as you rightfully said, if I'm hacked today, you will be hacked tomorrow. If I tell you how they got through my systems, you can change your system so you can prevent. So sharing is caring. And that is why we need to share much more. The only reason for not doing this is probably also that many security guys are old police officers. They do not have a long track record in sharing anything. They know that knowledge is power, so they will keep it in their drawer and they will use it as a commodity, right? So we need to find a way where we can exchange information without revealing everything. Homomorphic encryption, other things that we can use, again, technology to actually obtain the ability to see that there is a match without revealing anything. And I think that there is a future in that area as well.
I've always viewed the biggest issues in cybersecurity as kind of how do I map low-level events into events of interest? How do I figure out where we should pay attention and pursue kind of further investigation? And the third area is solving the identity problem. Like if I had high confidence in the identity of an actor, then I can kind of either relax a little bit or pay a heck of a lot more attention. What do you view as advances or lack of advances in these areas?
Again, I think that this is the core problem, basically. That is that in this myriad of information that you get, you need in a very short time to detect and react, and close the gap. We do not have time. We do not have days. It's about seconds, right? So you need also to make sure that you know what does a kill chain look like? How do they start? They start with reconnaissance, and after reconnaissance, they will maybe have port scannings and whatever. Then they will deploy small payloads, and they will see how we react and whatever. You need to know how an attack normally spells out. And if you know that, then you also have some kind of identification areas where you can use, for instance, your AI to help you detect that what is happening now is this. You might even be able to look at the signature, because many of the criminal groups, they use the same way. So you use one way, I use another way. This is like the old burglars, they did it in a specific way. So you always knew that this was the Dalton brothers and this was somebody else who had robbed this bank. It's also the same, that many of these big groups and networks, they use the same methodology. So phishing will be one of them, and then you will have to be able to look into it. Some use social media and whatever. And I think the ability, again, to detect this, to find a way how we can identify by sharing, see if we are right, other ones have seen the same, and then have more universal alerts. So if we, for instance, see that in RBS Bank, something is going on, will they share with us so that we can see if we are looking for the same thing or we can learn from it? And again, behind the scenes, my dream is that we could have a CDA that could take care of all of this for 10 banks, right? And look really, powered with AI that worked. And if we then had the gut to actually share, then I think that we could have the upper hand instead of always be behind the criminals.
So given, Troels, given the richness of these problems and the richness of the data that's involved and the complexity of the systems and the modeling and the various methods, and as you said, the varieties of methodology and kill chains and so forth, it seems like adoption of AI in cybersecurity has been fairly slow compared to adoption in many other fields, including manufacturing, including entertainment, including retail, including many other areas. Why do you think that is? Why has it been so difficult for cybersecurity to embrace AI harder and faster?
I think many of my security colleagues are skeptical towards this because they feel insecure in understanding something they basically don't understand, right? So you give away something to something in a box, and then you hope that it's the right thing that comes out, and you don't like that. So I think it's also about education, first of all, of the existing portfolio of security chiefs. And secondly, we need to educate a new generation of security leaders that can obtain and see that this is needed as part of their business to actually do it properly. So instead of looking at it with skepticism, they should embrace it, not just embrace it, like an idiot, but also work together to enrich it, to make sure that AI is used in the right way, because it's different to use it for security than for retail. Even some of the data are the same. It's different things that you want to train your algorithm in. And I just think that we need to have a couple of security guys with data guys together, sitting together for 3 months. Then you will have a very, very good beginning. If we could create this I think that you could actually create a tool that would be very, very easy to sell to others.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a need for kind of a better education in the cybersecurity community, but also there's responsibilities on the AI and data folks to open up the black boxes and make sure that these things are understandable and more acceptable by kind of other fields. Your position, I was always curious about this. Your position at the World Economic Forum gave you a unique perspective on hearing the issues, the problems, the stories that come up by a wide variety of users of the cybersecurity technology in government, in companies, in large enterprises, and smaller enterprises. What are the things that stood out for you from this very wide exposure? And are there some stories you could share, maybe, perhaps?
I think, again, you're right. When I started in the World Economic Forum, I've seen a lot, I've met a lot of people, but it was a different level, to be honest. When you enter the Geneva headquarters, you suddenly, through the chairman of the World Economic Forum, gets access to everybody. So when he said to me, Troels, I want you to set up this new center. The first thing you do is to travel to US, and then you talk to the White House. And then you also, and I'll make sure you meet the right people, and you will make the leader of CISA. And then after this, when you have dealt with them, you'll go to Russia, to Moscow. You will go to Beijing, then you will go to United Kingdom, then you will go to the Middle East, and then you will go to the European Commission. And then you will ask them, do they want our help, and what kind of help should that be? I met, the head of the cyberspace administration in China at very, very high level. I said hello to Putin, President Putin, and the Minister of Interior. I was sitting in the imperial imperial chair in the Bolshoi Theater, where the Tsar has been, because they also took it serious. And I met Chris Krebs in US, and everybody wanted to do the same thing. They actually wanted to make a difference. I'm not sure that the development showed we could make a difference. The geopolitical tensions increased, unfortunately, so we didn't succeed in the same way. On the other side, through the more business-oriented, when you wanted to talk to Jack Ma, on that time he was, that was before the Chinese, they hit him with a stick. Then he was a big guy, and I couldn't get hold of him. Then I went to my chairman and said, I need to talk to him about this and this and this. And then he took immediately in his office, the phone, and he called him. And he gave me the phone and said, now you talk to him and tell him what you want from him. So I could talk to Jack Ma that way. And, I've been in Saudi Aramco's operations center in down there where they have it. And I've seen so many things. And I have had the insight that you have lots of goodwill, lots of good people, but unfortunately a system right now that prevents us from working together. So I'm a bit negative about the forecast, because normally a nation state, when it wants to protect itself from crime, it first of all look at prevention, then protection, and then prosecution. In cyber, you have no prosecution. It's risk-free to be a cyber criminal. So it will increase, it will get worse, and then hopefully we'll find a way to get out of it. But I'm a bit skeptical towards that area, and that was what I was shown when I talked to these people. It was not basically a lack of will, it was the development that unfortunately took place and still takes place. And there are no trust between countries right now.
Yeah, trust is a huge issue. Let me take one angle on data, and then we can wrap up this discussion. We know that most pragmatic AI needs data to work. Yet, and this goes to the education of the community, is there an appreciation of the importance of data and data management in the cybersecurity community? What can we do to address this lack of understanding? It seems like people tend to leave it to the software and systems vendors for cybersecurity to figure out data. But like you mentioned, there's all sorts of data from physical, from surveillance, from video. Much of the relevant data is not accessible to these systems. What's your thoughts on this?
I think I have two thoughts on it. The first one is that that we need to have better cooperation between the experts in both fields, right? I think it has been proven also for me difficult sometimes to talk even inside Barclays with the AI experts. I thought sometimes that I wasted my time. I was talking left and they were understanding right, and I didn't get anything that I found useful. I think there needs to be a discussion and an agreement on top level, and then it needs to be implemented on a lower level, right? So that the security officer, what is it that he wants? He needs to define that very clearly. On the other side, the AI guy needs to not overpromise everything, because it's not everything that you can start with, but you can probably find a way where you can start to build together, and then you can learn, and you need to have a team together. You cannot just put it over the desk and then hope that they'll find out. It's not the way it works. It works only if you sit next to each other and you can see the aha moments on both sides, basically. And then I think it is very, very good. Secondly, I think that we need to go from, and that is a bit out of the field we discussed with, because I think that big data is dealing with information, but we also need at a certain level to deal with insight, information that has been assessed and there has been a decision on. That is what I call insight. So if you were a CISO in Goldman Sachs and I was in Barclays, if I told you that I've had this experience and I'm doing this and this, then I hope that you will, just because you trust my insight and what I've done, you will just do the same instead of making a new, assessment of it. And that is the way that we can do things much faster if we trust each other. This insight sharing we don't have. Do you remember when we had that the NSA, they lost Eternal Blue back in 2015? It was the tool that later was then stolen by a Russian group, Shadow Brokers, that uploaded it to the net and said everybody could download it, and they could then they could engage in a wine club for hackers later. When we assessed this, we saw that if this was weaponized, and that would take 6 weeks, then we would be dead meat. So we start patching immediately. And Barclays was not hit because the outcome was WannaCry. But I didn't share that knowledge and insight with anybody. And I still regret this the day today, that there wasn't a way that I could have done this. This is why we also need this in sharing is caring. And some of the data that AI can help us identify, we should also be able to share in a very fast area.
No, those are those are great insights that actually the criminals directly or indirectly end up sharing the knowledge and building on top of what they learn from each other, and it's not happening in our defense community, basically. With that, I wanna wrap this up, maybe with a couple of kind of embedded questions and big thoughts. With the amazing growth of and severity of the cyber attacks, how do you feel about our chances to cope with them? Is there a real hope, or are we doomed to be venturing into increasingly dangerous terrain as a society, where, especially with digitization accelerating everywhere? And as you answer that question, are there any last words of wisdom pertaining to AI and data that you'd like to share with our audience? So maybe I'll throw those two at you.
Yeah, I think that the first one is a good question. And having been in cybersecurity for the last 40 years, I've seen a lot, I've heard a lot, and to a certain extent, you also start becoming more misanthropic and more negative, because you see that the criminals, they develop, and you're just trying to catch up, and it's a whack-a-mole. Yes, I'm very optimistic, Usama. Humanity will survive the internet, and we will prevail, and we will win. There will be defeats, and there will be bad days, but there will also be light at the end of the tunnel. We will overcome this. I'm very sure we will. The criminals are still criminals. They don't want to spend $1 to steal 50 cents. So they will still go low on loads of things that we can prevent us out of. And we will be better to also share. So on this, I'm optimistic. I don't think I will see it buckle up. It will be a bumpy road, but we will still reach the goal, and we will be there for Thanksgiving dinner. I promise you that. The other thing is, do I have anything of value for our audience that I can share? I still think that sharing is caring. I still think that we should never give up. I still think that we should work much closer between experts with your knowledge and experts with my knowledge on all levels, because I think that we need research in that area. If we do that rightfully, then we can actually do something that can help everybody. And that is what we want. And tomorrow you will still have bicycle thefts and you will still have cyber incidents, but hopefully we will deal with the murders and the robberies, and then there will be petty crimes that we cannot deal with. But you cannot deal with there is no absolute security in the physical world and not in the digital world. I'm still optimistic. We will get there.
Well, Troels, it's great to hear that optimism, especially coming from somebody like you who's probably seen the ugliest of the ugly underbelly of the crime communities, both physical and cyber. And I thank you for sharing this. I couldn't agree with you more. It's a question of trust. It's a question of collaboration. It's a question of working together and education. So the challenge is there. I wish I could be as optimistic as you, but I'm very grateful for your joining us and sharing these thoughts. And thank you for being with us in this episode, Troels.
Thank you, Usama, and thank you very much for inviting me. And together, you and I, we will continue to be optimistic. I'm also, I am actually optimistic, but it will be a bumpy road. Thank you, my friend.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in, and stay tuned for our next episode. Thanks again, Troels, and goodbye, everyone.
Thanks for listening to Legends of Data and AI. We hope you enjoyed our deep dive into the world of data and AI. If you're keen to learn more about making data and AI work in the real world and in any organization, join us next episode and subscribe to the podcast. As always, you can head over to open-insights.com to sign up for our email list, learn more about the work we do, and have access to data resources. See you on the next podcast.